Welcome everyone, and we're at another milestone in our election cycle. This is campaign 2026. I'm Dr. Randy Brinson, President and Chairman of the Christian Coalition of Alabama. I have a distinct pleasure tonight to have with us Maurice McCaney, and he is running in District 1. Maurice, welcome to our podcast with Christian Coalition of Alabama.
Thank you, Dr. Brinson, and thank you, Christian Coalition of Alabama, for having me. It's an honor.
Well, what's really great, we're really excited about your campaign. There's a lot of challengers to incumbents this year. You know, it's kind of an anti-incumbent season, it seems like, with all the things that's going on with affordability, healthcare, issues with the Public Service Commission. There's a sense that the incumbents are kind of out of touch with the people. Is that kind of what you're seeing in your race there and around the Florence area?
Sure, and I think that's indicative of politics in general, but particularly when you have long-term um, politicians, that tends to be the story. As we've been canvassing the area and talking with people, a lot of the sentiment is, well, I've been here X amount of years, and you're one of the first to come and talk to me. And so that's discouraging in one sense, in that the role of an elected official should be to do the will of the people. And so the flip side of that coin is, how can you do the will of the people if you don't know the people?
That's exactly right. And in fact, I think the last race you're in was like 300 votes or something separated you from the incumbent. So
Yes, sir.
I think it shows well that you're obviously very popular in the district, and you know sometimes the second time or third time's the charm. So we'll just have to see.
That's
I
right.
want to ask you about some specific issues that people are interested in this election
Sure.
cycle. Let's start with gambling. You know, if you
Yeah.
look at the gambling issue, it's kind of an insidious thing. People say, well, people should just have a vote on gambling, but they don't realize when you have that much money. I mean, we're talking about now $300+ million paid by DraftKings, sports betting, the gambling issue, the gambling magnates, the Porch Creek Indians. That's going to a lot to push back against when you have that much money. When people get this false sense, oh well, we want gambling, but there's more to gambling than just a lottery. Can you talk to us a little
Yes.
about what your position is on gambling in there in the state of Alabama?
I'd be glad to. So, one of the organizations that I am an executive board member of is ALCAP, the Alabama Citizens Action Program. And one of the major battles that we've been fighting for several years is gambling. Um, Gambling takes many forms. But the long and short of it, in my job and profession as an attorney, I often see the fallout of what happens when people misuse, if you will, their finances. And gambling is one of the easiest and darkest traps known to man, because it has the allure of quick return for very minimal input. And that's just not the case with gambling. So therefore, I see the fallout of what happens to families. I see the drug addiction that it leads to. I see the separation and the divorces, and the children being forced into single family homes, or even in worst cases, the custody of the Department of Human Resources. So for me, gambling, if everyone were able to participate in their vices and there be no repercussions, then sure, you could have those vices. But the unfortunate reality is that we as humans cannot control ourselves. And when afforded the opportunity to engage in illicit activities, there's always a just brutal, bitter end.
Well, that's exactly right. And the other thing that people need to understand when you talk about the lottery, they usually talk about other things. I had a discussion with a legislator from Baldwin County. He said, "Oh, well, I think that people should be able to vote, but we're going to keep it out of Baldwin County." I thought,
Uh-huh.
well, isn't
Uh-huh.
that priceless? Okay, you're
Yeah.
going to let people vote and give people an opportunity to vote, knowing that they'll be overwhelmed by all the money from gambling, and it passes. Then just let those people do it there. But I don't want it in my backyard. It seems
Sure.
kind of hypocritical in a way to me.
Well, they often compare it to marijuana, saying that, sports betting is the gateway drug, just like marijuana is. And we see kind of how uh, the sports betting is not the ultimate end. The lottery is not the ultimate end. It is, in fact, big casinos right in our backyards. And when you ask anyone you bump into on the street, do you want a casino in your city, in your backyard? Generally, the answer is no, because they know what comes with the casino: the crime, the drugs, the sex trafficking. Here in Lauderdale County, we are already kind of in the hub of this triad for sex trafficking. What on earth do you think would happen if gambling and casinos came to this area? That sex trafficking trade would explode. So, no, I do not support gambling. That is not an issue that I believe is even up for debate as far as where I stand on that. 4 years ago, I was against it. I'm still against it today.
Well, that's very comforting, Maurice. I really appreciate that. The other things we've been seeing in legislative, it's a strange legislative session. And I was talking to the legislators this year. It seems like there's no debate, for example, and they don't even follow the rules. If they have something to push through, like this PSC thing, they had it introduced on a Tuesday. They had a committee meeting 12 hours later without any public notice, and they passed it the next day. It's like this group think. There's nobody's
Yeah.
independently grouping. They just vote stuff through without even knowing what it is. I was also down there one time, and the legislator that was sponsoring a bill, he was told to sponsor this bill, and when questioned about the bill, he didn't even know what was in the bill.
Mhm.
Never seen anything like it to this degree right now. So talk about the P. Let's just talk about PSC real briefly.
Sure.
I know people are concerned about that. Here they're trying to ram something through because basically the Southern Company lost one of its key votes in Georgia through an election, elected PSC. So they said, oh no, we can't have election anymore because we might lose those votes. And so now they want to appoint it and create some kind of czar over the Secretary of Energy, paid nobody what, that could basically veto anything they say.
Right.
It seems ridiculous. Have you had any insight in that you've been talking to the voters about?
Sure. I've been to many events, and at these events, there's always additional speakers as well. And so, this race for the PSC, one of the particular places, the races, he's going up against an incumbent. But with this new bill, what would happen is that the two people challenging for that place and one of the current incumbent officers of the PSC all would be in the same district. So you could have a winner and then an incumbent, and one of them has to go. So now, how do we decide who goes? It is it is a scenario wherein, why is it such a bad idea to allow the people to decide who will represent them? That is one thing that I believe strongly in, is that the voting public should decide who represents them. You get into all of these complications and pitfalls of an appointed body. Well, who appoints them? Well, okay, they answered that in the bill, but what goes into that decision as to who's appointed? Obviously, special interests. So now you have a scenario where a body as powerful as the PSC may become influenced by special interests. We already see it in our legislature, where our elected officials vote according to the special interests who are paying them. Well, we want that stopped in the legislature. Why would we extend that now to the Public Service Commission? To me, it shouldn't even be a question or an argument as to whether or not those members are elected. I know here locally there's also some question about whether or not and statewide, whether or not the local school board should be appointed. Well, again, what is wrong with allowing the parents who are sending their children to these schools to have a vote in selecting who will represent and be members of the school board? I do not understand this rush to appointed governing bodies that are answerable to someone who is not even created yet. I don't understand that.
Right, and that's very you articulated it very well, Maurice. And that is the problem. But again, the special interests want their unfair
Hmm.
advantage in most things, and so they can to the disadvantage most of the time of the consumer.
Correct.
And lastly, I think one of the things I was looking at something today that's very interesting is like the choices are what do we do between meals, mortgage, and medicine? So your food, your housing, and your medicine, meals, mortgage, and medicine. And that's the dilemma people are having. And unfortunately, they're having to have to decide short charge one of those three things.
Hmm.
I was involved very much with the healthcare as a physician. This thing with Blue Cross Blue Shield trying to
Hmm.
create a bill where they could move assets from their reserves into a private slush fund, if you will, basically a holding company, and then they could buy for-profit entities for that. And yet, none of those profits were deemed be necessary to give back to the consumer. Have you heard anything back in your constituency about that, about healthcare costs, what the state is doing to address healthcare costs and accessibility and things like that in the Florence area?
Absolutely. So, healthcare is a huge issue. As the cost of healthcare rapidly increases, obviously, again, I think you put it rather succinctly. Either I'm going to eat, I'm going to have a place to live, or I'm going to have a healthy body. And the cost of healthcare is rapidly forcing people to choose to eliminate that health care. Now, obviously, that begins the push and the groan and the cry for the full reimplementation of Obamacare. However, that's not the answer either. A common sense analysis of our healthcare system has to be done. It is becoming unaffordable. Our Medicaid and Medicare systems are broken. The competitive advantage that is given to large hospital organizations and entities is further fueling that increase in healthcare premiums and coverage. So yes, I have been speaking with individuals about that Blue Cross bill. The opinions range from, well, this is backlash from Alpha becoming a insured agency in Alabama, or Blue Cross is trying to create this mega monopoly where they own the hospitals, the clinics, the ambulatory systems, the pharmaceuticals, and as a proponent, generally, of free market enterprise and capitalism, on one hand, I understand what Blue Cross is doing. They are an organization that has the ability to do what they're proposing to do. On the other hand, when we're talking about taking those quote unquote reserves or subsidies, or I think you could liken it to an escrow, and then investing that with no seemingly no safeguards in place, or to replace those in the event of those catastrophic claims by policyholders, that becomes a little curious and troubling, because then what does happen if there are, worst case scenario, you have half the state of Alabama filing catastrophic claims? Well, if those reserves are no longer there, how does the insurance company make good? And so that is the analysis of how our healthcare system is run, the analysis of how higher education is run. Those costs are just exponentially growing every year as well. All those things have to be analyzed, because at a certain point, you price out those who may actually need those services.
That's exactly right. And to your point, what was interesting with the legislature, they thought that reserves was Blue Cross's money. In
Mhm.
reality, it's like you
Right,
made a good analogy. It's like escrow in your account. Your escrow that's on when you pay a mortgage, that's your money. It's not the
right,
mortgage company's money.
right,
So they are basically taking your excess premiums that they're not using to invest for their own benefit to
right,
put back in their pocket money that's supposed to be there for you,
right.
and then that's the one thing. And the second thing, the Trump White House, and this you need to tell your people there in Florence, the Trump White House was vehemently opposed to this
Mhm.
because it basically cements Obamacare.
Right.
Obamacare, they're using Obamacare to create these vertical integrations that was not available to them before that.
Mhm.
And I thought it was instructive too that Mark Cuban, Maurice, eventually did a thing, said, hey, we just need to divest all that, like a Sherman antitrust. Tell every insurance company, no, you can't own a hospital, you can't own a doctor's office, you can't own a PBM, you can't own a pharmacy. You can just do your core business, and that is it. You can provide insurance, you can collect premiums, you can pay claims, and you make money on that, and that's the extent of it. And that's what we're getting to, is almost to an antitrust thing. And the
Right.
irony of the whole thing was that Blue Cross had just got a $2.6 billion judgment against them. And
Mm.
that's what fueled this whole thing of moving these assets. And now they're going to shield these assets over in this other shell company,
Right.
and still short the providers, still short the people that are consumers, and
Mhm.
the doctors and the hospitals and everybody else. So it's more than just that. It's because of the way we've created Blue Cross. So I think you articulated it very well, and I'm hoping that will resonate with the voters, and they'll see that you have a better approach to that. Um,
Well, I think that holistically looking at the legislature, one of the things that I find fascinating is that you may get there are some legislators that do not ask a question. If the party and this is both sides of the aisle, if the party or if the big donors and lobbyists ask for it, they just do it. Then you have another group that they may ask the surface level question. It seems that there are very few of our elected officials who dig deeper to ask the questions, okay, if I do this, then what? And oftentimes, the unintended consequences of some of their actions are only felt by those of us who are not in Montgomery, who don't know what's coming. And then over time, because as human nature, we simply just forget. Oh yeah, that's right. That was they did pass that tax. Oh yeah, I'm really mad about it. Oh, but the election season is 2 years away. So now, 2 years later, we've forgotten what has happened. And I think it's high time that
right.
we as the voting public, we remember those things. We call into question. There's a lot of talk about transparency. Well, I like to say that transparency means nothing without accountability. So I can tell you all day long exactly how I'm about to ruin your life and take your money. But if I'm never held accountable for it, so what? You just now have knowledge of how I'm harming you without having the ability to hold me accountable. So I think accountability of our elected officials is a must.
Well, thank you, Maurice. You've articulated it extremely well. I think this information will be very helpful to the voters there in District 1. We wish you the best of luck. Our prayers are with you, and even and the person you're challenging, that God's will be done and all this stuff, that voters
Yes.
will turn out and their voice will be heard. So thank you very much for getting into the ring. Thank you for sacrificing your time and effort and being a candidate to represent their area around the Florence area. And we appreciate so much this time being able to share with you.
Okay. Again, thank you, Dr. Brinson and Alabama Christian Coalition. Yes, and please, prayers. May 19th, the primary will be here soon. So I do definitely covet your prayers and support.